It was supposed to be a simple mission. Jack had been sent to the planet Scifi as part of a peacekeeping crew stationed in the outer reaches of the galaxy. The mission was clear: assist with negotiations between the human alliance and the Zifferans, a species known for their beauty and their ancient culture. Jack, young soldier from Earth, had never expected his life to change. But on that quiet afternoon, as he stood in the grand halls of the Zifferan Palace, everything shifted. The air was thick with tension as delegates from different species gathered, and the heavy weight of diplomacy hung in the room. Jack's eyes wandered, scanning the impressive architecture and the grand statues of Zifferan history. When a sudden figure caught his attention, she was unlike any being Jack had ever seen. The Zifferan queen, Zara, stood before him. She was tall, with silver skin that shimmered under the soft lighting. Her hair flowed like liquid light, a mixture of blue and white strands, and her eyes deep, knowing, and ancient met Jack's. With an intensity that took him by surprise, Zara was breathtaking, a living symbol of her people's grace and wisdom. Jack had read about her in reports, but nothing could prepare him for seeing her in person. She exuded an energy that was both calming and powerful. Zara was said to be the wisest of her kind, a leader whose decisions shaped the future of entire galaxies. But to Jack, she was just a woman all by it, a very different one from the humans he knew. As Jack awkwardly shifted his weight, a quiet voice broke the silence. "You are the human ambassador." Zara's words were soft, almost like a melody, but they carried a strength that commanded respect. Jack nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. I'm here to assist in the peace talks." His voice felt small in comparison to the room's energy. Zara smiled gently. "You are not what I expected," she said, her eyes scanning Jack's uniform. "But perhaps that is a good thing." Jack wasn't sure what she meant, but before he could respond, she stepped closer, her presence making the air feel warmer. He instinctively took a small step back, nervous for the first time in his life. Zara, noticing his discomfort, gave a soft laugh. "Do not worry, human. I mean you no harm." There was something in her eyes, a glimmer of something unfamiliar. Jack, still a little unsure of what to make of the encounter, couldn't help but feel an odd sense of peace when standing near her. They spoke for a few more minutes about the upcoming negotiations. Zara seemed fascinated by Jack's descriptions of Earth, her curiosity about humans clear in her every word. Yet despite the formalities, Jack noticed that something about her seemed different from the other leaders. She wasn't just listening, she was connecting with him, as if she understood him on a deeper level. Before he left the palace that day, Zara unexpectedly touched his arm. It was a light touch, soft and brief, but it sent a strange, electric feeling through Jack. He was sure it was nothing more than a polite gesture, but there was something in Zara's gaze that told him otherwise. He didn't know it then, but that moment would change everything. Days passed and Jack returned to his quarters, trying to shake off the strange sensation that lingered from that brief encounter. The talks proceeded as planned, with the human delegation working hard to ensure peace between the species. Jack often found himself distracted, his mind wandering back to that moment with Zara. He wasn't sure what it was, but something about her felt different. It wasn't just her beauty or power, it was the way she made him feel like the most important person in the room. Without even trying, the following week, Jack received an unexpected message from Zara. He was sitting in his room when the holographic projector flickered to life, and there she was, Zara standing in front of him, her expression serious yet warm. "Human ambassador," she began, her voice filled with a strange mix of formality and something else. "I hope the peace talks are progressing well, but I have something to share with you." Jack sat up straight, confused. "What's this about?" "Your Majesty?" Zara paused for a moment, her expression unreadable. "I know this may be unexpected, but I must inform you of something very important." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and Jack could feel the weight of her words even through the distance between them. "I am with child." Jack blinked, completely stunned. What?" Zara's gaze softened. "You are the father." Jack felt as though the room had just dropped out from under him. He had no idea what was going on. But he stuttered, struggling. To find his words? How is that possible? Zara smiled, a gentle yet knowing expression. The touch we shared, it was more than just a greeting. It was an ancient sign, one that foretells the joining of two souls. Your presence, your touch, has bound our fates together in a way that even I did not expect. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. But I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't know. I know, Zara replied, her voice soft and understanding. But it is done. And I believe this is a blessing. A child born from both our peoples, one that will bring unity and strength to the galaxy. Jack was silent for a long moment, trying to absorb the information. The idea of becoming a father, especially under such strange circumstances, was overwhelming. But as he looked at Zara, something in her eyes made him believe that she was not frightened nor upset. Instead, she was overjoyed. This is a lot to take in, Jack finally said. But I promise I'll do my best to understand and help in any way I can. Zara nodded, her smile widening. I knew you would. This is just the beginning, Jack. Together, we will bring about a new era. Jack had barely processed Zara's message when the reality of the situation hit him. The weight of her words, the truth of what had just happened, began to settle in his mind. Father, he couldn't quite grasp the idea. How could this be real? One touch, one simple meeting, and now he was tied to the queen of the Zifrins forever. Days passed, but Jack couldn't escape the constant whirl of thoughts. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Zara's serene face, her calm voice, and her unexpected joy came rushing back. He knew that Zara was more than just a leader. She was a symbol of hope and strength to her people. But what did it mean for him, for Earth? His time on Zyphara had been peaceful so far. The negotiations were going well, and it looked like the galaxy might soon see the end of a long-standing war. But Jack could no longer focus just on the talks. His mind kept returning to the impossible situation with Zara, the queen who now carried his child. He was called to the palace again, and this time he knew things would be different. As he walked through the grand hallways, his thoughts raced. Was he ready for this? How would he fit into Zara's world, where the stakes were so much higher than anything he'd known? When Jack entered the room, Zara was already waiting for him. She stood tall, her silver skin glowing softly in the light, her hair cascading like a waterfall of light. She looked even more majestic than before, yet there was an air of warmth about her. Jack, she said, her voice as soothing as ever. Thank you for coming. Jack nodded, trying to hide his unease. Of course. I didn't expect to hear from you like this, but I need to understand. Need to know what's going on. Zara smiled. I understand your confusion. This is all happening very fast. I must tell you, this is not something that has happened in my lifetime more in the history of the Zifrins. A human, a foreigner, ... bringing life into my bloodline. It is both a surprise and a blessing. Jack swallowed, still unsure what to make of it. I didn't mean for this to happen, Zara. It was just a touch. It wasn't supposed to change everything, I know. Zara said, stepping closer. But that touch, Jack, it was more than just a physical connection. It was something the ancient texts spoke of, something that had been forgotten over time. The prophecy was buried, waiting for someone to bring it to life. And now it's real. Jack felt a cold shiver run through him. A prophecy? Yes, Zara continued. Long ago it was foretold that one day a human would join with a Zifrin. The child born from such a union would bring unity to the galaxy, something that has eluded us for centuries. The child you will father, Jack, will be a bridge between our worlds. The words hung in the air like an unspoken promise. Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Though he was still uncertain about his place in it all, Zara studied him for a moment, as if reading his thoughts. You are scared. I can see it in your eyes. But I want you to know that you are not alone in this. I will be with you every step of the way. Jack exhaled slowly, trying to calm his nerves. He had no idea how to proceed. How could he be ready for something as huge as this? Could he truly father a child who would change the fate of so many? I don't know if I'm ready for. Zara's eyes softened with understanding. None of us ever truly asks for the things that change us. But sometimes it is not about what we want. It is about what we need. This child is not just a part of you, Jack. It is a part of both of us. Together, we can face whatever comes our way. The warmth in Zara's voice reassured Jack, but there was still a part of him that was hesitant. He had only just gotten used to the idea of being in space, let alone being involved in something as world-changing as this. I'll do my best, Jack said, his voice steadying. But what does this mean for Earth? For my people? Zara nodded thoughtfully. That is something we must face together. I have already informed the council about the child, and the response has been ... mixed. Some see this as a chance for peace, while others see it as a threat. The galaxy is not prepared for what this will mean, so we'll be in danger. Jack asked, the concern rising in his chest. Zara looked at him seriously. We may face opposition. There are those who fear change, who fear the union of our peoples. But I believe the strength of this child and the love we share will overcome any obstacle. Jack could feel the weight of her words, the responsibility she was placing on him. His life had just taken a turn he hadn't expected. A simple mission had become a much larger, far more personal challenge than he could have ever imagined. I don't know how to be a father in a situation like this, Jack admitted quietly, staring down at the floor. Zara placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle but firm. You do not need to have all the answers now, Jack. Just trust in this. Trust in what we are building together. This child will be our future, and it will be one filled with hope. As Jack looked up at her, something in his chest shifted. There was still so much he didn't understand, so much that felt uncertain. But there was also a sense of peace he couldn't deny. Zara believed in him, and though he was still unsure, he realized he had to believe in this too. The door to the room opened, and one of the Zephoran attendants entered with a gentle bow. Your Majesty, the attendant said softly, the council awaits your presence. Zara turned to Jack and gave him a small smile. I must go. But know that we are in this. Jack nodded, still processing everything, but feeling more determined. He had no choice but to follow Zara and face what came next. As the door closed behind her, Jack was left alone with his thoughts. The galaxy he now understood was not just a place of stars and ships, it was a place of connections of people. And somehow, he was now part of that story. The next few days were a blur for Jack. The peaceful routine of the diplomatic mission had been replaced by a whirlwind of new responsibilities and confusing emotions. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Zara's face, her warm, comforting smile, and the certainty in her voice when she had told him about the prophecy. But what did it really mean for him? For Earth? Could he truly accept this strange new life he had been thrust into? Jack wasn't sure. He had only just gotten used to the idea of being a soldier in a strange galaxy. But now, he had to face something far bigger. He was about to become the father of a child who might change the course of history the morning after their meeting. Jack received another message from Zara. It was a simple hologram, just like the last one. But this time, there was a certain sense of calm in Zara's voice that made Jack feel both comforted and uneasy. Jack, she said, her image glowing softly. I know this is difficult. I know you have many questions, but we need to speak more about what lies ahead. The prophecy is more than just an ancient story. It is a truth that has shaped our people for centuries. Jack rubbed his eyes. He couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just been appended in a way he couldn't control. Still, there was something in Zara's voice that made him want to listen. He hadn't felt this way before, like he was part of something bigger than himself. It was both frightening and exciting at the same time. After the message, Jack was summoned to the palace once again. This time, he felt different walking through the grand halls. He wasn't just an observer anymore. He was an active part of something much larger. The air around him seemed thicker, filled with the weight of decisions that would soon be made. When Jack entered the meeting room, Zara was standing by a large, round table, surrounded by advisors and officials. She looked as graceful and powerful as ever, but there was something else about her now. There was a quiet strength in her posture, a sense that she had made peace with the strange path their lives were now following. "Jack," Zara said, her voice calm but firm. "Thank you for coming. We need to talk about what comes next, not just for us, but for the galaxy." Jack nodded and took a seat at the table. The room was silent, all eyes on him as he sat beside Zara. The advisors, who had been speaking in hushed tones, quieted as the Queen began to speak again. "I've told you of the prophecy," Zara continued, "but there are things I haven't explained. You must understand the significance of this child. The Xiphrin people have long believed that one day a child born of both our worlds would unite us all. But that is only the beginning." Jack leaned forward, listening closely. He wasn't sure he understood it all, but he was starting to feel that this was more than just a personal situation for him. And Zara, it was something that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. "What do you mean, unite us?" Jack asked, his voice a little more urgent than he intended. Zara glanced around the room at the advisors before answering. "The galaxy is divided, Jack. There are factions that have been at war for centuries, species that have never known peace. The Ziphrins have always been peaceful, but we are not enough to stop the conflicts that rage among the stars. The child we will raise will be the key to bringing those factions together." Jack's heart raced. "But what does that have to do with me? I'm just a soldier. I'm not prepared for any of this." Zara looked at him with soft, understanding eyes. "You may not feel ready, but you are a part of this destiny now. Your union with my own, unexpected though it was, has already begun to create the change that the prophecy foretold." Jack felt a weight on his chest. It was hard to grasp, hard to believe. He had never seen himself as anyone special, just a soldier doing his duty. Yet now, in the space of a few days, he had become a key player in something far bigger than he could understand. The future of the galaxy seemed like an impossible responsibility to carry. "I don't know what to say," Jack whispered, shaking his head. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know what was happening until it was too late." Zara's expression softened. "I know, Jack. No one ever asks for this kind of responsibility. The galaxy needs us both now. We have to stand together, not just for the peace of the Ziphrins, but for the future of all worlds." She stood and moved toward the large window in the room, gazing out at the vast landscape of Zifra. Jack followed her with his eyes, still trying to understand the full scope of what was happening. "You may not know it yet," Zara said quietly, "but this child will be a symbol of peace, of hope, and it will not be easy. There will be those who do not want this union to succeed. Some will see the child as a threat to their power." Jack frowned. "So we'll have enemies?" Zara turned to face him. "Yes. There will be many who see this child as a way to control the galaxy. They will not understand our love, our bond. They will try to tear us apart. But we must stand strong. We must show the galaxy that peace is possible, and that we human and Zifrin can lead them to that peace." Jack swallowed hard. It was overwhelming. Why could one man, one child, change the course of so much? The pressure was already mounting, and Jack wasn't sure he was ready for it. But as he looked at Zara, the conviction in her eyes was clear. She believed in him, in their shared future, and maybe, just maybe, he could learn to believe in it too. "I don't know what will happen," Jack said slowly, "but I'll try. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work." Zara smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile. "That is all I ask, Jack. Together, we will change the galaxy." Jack stood, feeling the weight of their conversation. Wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, he realized that he was no longer just a soldier. He was part of something much larger, a force that could change the galaxy, for better or for worse. And as he looked at Zara, he couldn't help but feel a small flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could do it. The days following Jack's conversation with Zara were filled with uncertainty. The responsibility that had been placed on his shoulders began to weigh heavily on him. He had never imagined that his simple life on Earth would lead him to become a key figure in something so vast. His thoughts were constantly occupied by the child Zara carried, and the strange new life he now found himself part of. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this, but Zara believed in him. and that belief made him feel like he could at least try. Despite Jack's hesitation, the Zifron people rallied behind the prophecy, believing that the union of their queen and a human was the key to peace. The news spread quickly, and soon other species began to react. Not all reactions were positive. At the Zifron palace, the atmosphere had changed. The usual calm serenity was now tinged with tension. Advisors and officials whispered in the halls. The council members debated in private meetings. And, despite the peace talks moving forward, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface. Zara had warned him that not everyone would accept their union. And now, Jack was beginning to see why. There were factions, powerful factions, that saw the prophecy as a threat to their own control. Zara's child, born from both human and Zyphrian blood, could unite the galaxy, bringing an end to decades of conflict. That kind of power would not be easily accepted by those who stood to lose their influence. One evening, as Jack walked through the palace gardens, he felt a sudden unease. He had been thinking about the future of the galaxy, about Zara, and about the child they would soon raise. But now, the stillness of the night seemed to hold a quiet danger. He turned a corner and found himself face to face with a familiar face, Korath, a high-ranking Zyphron advisor who had often questioned the wisdom of the peace talks. Korath said, his voice low and controlled, "We need to talk." Jack had always sensed that Korath was not entirely supportive of the alliance between humans and Zyphrons, but he had never imagined the conversation would go this way. "I don't have time for games," Jack replied, standing tall. "What is it you want?" Korath's eyes narrowed. The prophecy, the child. He paused, making sure Jack was paying attention. "You think this will bring peace? You think your involvement will unite our people?" Jack felt a pang of unease, but held his ground. "Yes, that's what Zara believes. That's what I believe too." "What's your problem with that?" Korath chuckled bitterly. "You are naive human. Galaxy is not ready for peace. There are those who will not accept your influence here, no matter what Zara believes. There are those who will do anything to stop this child from being born." Jack felt a cold rush of fear. "What are you saying?" Korath stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There are factions who believe the child is a threat to their power. Your child, Jack, will be a symbol of everything they cannot control. There will be those who will stop at nothing to ensure that peace is never achieved." Jack took a step back, trying to process what Korath was saying. "What are you suggesting? Are you threatening me?" Korath shook his head. "Not just you. I'm warning you. There are dark forces at work. They will not let this happen without a fight." Before Jack could respond, Korath turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. The conversation left Jack feeling colder than he had ever felt. He had thought the greatest threat to their peace would come from the warlords of distant galaxies, not from within Zara's own people. Yet, as he thought about it, it made sense. There was too much at stake, too much power on the line. The following morning, Jack met with Zara in the palace chambers. Her face was serene, but Jack could tell she had noticed the change in the air. The whispers, the tension, it was all around them. "Jack," she said, her voice steady but concerned, "I know something is bothering you. What is it?" Jack hesitated, unsure of how much to tell her. He didn't want to add to her worries, but he couldn't keep it to himself. He had to be honest with her. "I spoke with Korath last night," Jack said, sitting down beside her. "He warned me. Said there are factions who will stop at nothing to prevent the child from being born. That there are dark forces that will try to destroy everything we're working for." Zara's expression remained calm, but Jack could see the flicker of concern in her eyes. "I've known for some time that there would be those who would resist, but we cannot allow fear to control us. Our path is set, Jack. The child will be born, and we will unite our people." Jack took a deep breath, wanted to believe Zara. He wanted to believe that the prophecy could be fulfilled. But something in the pit of his stomach told him that this was only the beginning of a much bigger fight. "Do you think it's safe?" Jack asked, his voice low. Zara turned to face him, her eyes filled with determination. "I believe in what we are doing, Jack. I believe in the child we will raise together, but I know the road will be difficult. We must be prepared for the challenges ahead. Jack nodded. I'm ready. Stand by you, Zara. But I think we need to start preparing for the worst. She smiled, a soft, reassuring smile. We will face it together. Whatever comes, we will overcome. The conversation ended, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. The warning. From Korath, the factions rising against Zara's roulette was all too much to ignore. He knew they had to act quickly before the situation escalated. Later that evening, as Jack stood by the palace balcony, looking out over the landscape of Zyphara, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the universe on his shoulders. Peace was something everyone wanted, but peace always came with a price. And now it seemed that the price for this peace would be far steeper than he could have imagined. As he turned to go back inside, Jack made a vow to himself. He would protect Zara, and he would protect the child, no matter what the cost. The galaxy was about to change, and he was ready to be a part of that change. The days had been peaceful, but Jack could feel the tension rising. Zara had warned him peace wasn't easy to maintain in the galaxy. There were always forces that would seek to tear it apart, and now that the child was a symbol of that peace, the threat of opposition felt more real than ever. Despite Zara's calm demeanor, Jack knew they were not safe.
Alice was quiet.
But the quiet was heavy, with the knowledge that danger was closer than ever. Jack had been spending a lot of time in the palace, trying to get used to his new role. He had trained as a soldier, but nothing in his training had prepared him for what lay ahead. He had no idea how to be a part of something this important, and the pressure of it all sometimes felt too much to handle. But whenever he looked at Zara, he remembered why he was here. They were in this together. It's a child they were bringing into the world was the future of their people, of the entire galaxy. One evening, as Jack walked through the palace gardens, he noticed a strange stillness in the air. It wasn't the usual calm of the Ziffaran palace, it was the kind of silence that made Jack's instincts scream. Something was wrong. His hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side, though he knew he was outside of his usual military zone. Before he could think more on it, a loud explosion shattered the night. The ground trembled beneath him, and the walls of the palace shook. Jack's heart skipped a beat, and his first thought was of Zara. He sprinted toward the palace, knowing the attack had to be from those who sought to disrupt the peace. When Jack arrived at the entrance, the palace was already under attack. There was chaos everywhere. Ziffaran soldiers were rushing to their positions, trying to fight off the unknown enemy. The sound of blaster fire and explosions filled the air. Jack ducked behind a pillar, trying to make sense of what was happening. The attackers were well organized, and their ships had somehow bypassed the palace's defenses. Jack's mind raced. Who were these people? What did they want? And why now, of all times? Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Zara, her face pale but determined. She had heard the explosions and immediately left the safety of her chambers to help her people. She was always brave, always strong, but Jack could see the worry in her eyes. Zara, got it, Jack called out, rushing to her side. She turned to face him. Her expression, a mixture of concern and resolve. Jack, we're under attack. I need to protect the child, my child, and get to safety. Jack grabbed her arm gently. I won't let anything happen to you, he said, his voice firm with determination. Zara nodded, grateful for his words. But Jack could see the fear that flickered behind her eyes. The attack was more than just a random strike, it was a calculated move by those who wanted to stop the prophecy. Those who feared the power of the child they were about to bring into the world. They're trying to stop us, Zara, Jack said, his voice tight with anger. They want to kill the child before it's born. Zara didn't respond at first. She simply nodded, her gaze cold and focused. We knew this might happen. We cannot let them win. The future depends on us. The two of them moved quickly, heading toward the inner chambers, where the most important security measures were. As they walked, Jack could hear the sounds of fighting growing louder. The palace was under siege, and it was clear that the attackers were well prepared. Whoever they were, they had come with one goal in mind: to stop the birth of Zara's child. Jack and Zara made their way to a hidden room, where several of Zara's most trusted guards had already gathered. The guards, though powerful, were outnumbered, and the palace's defenses were quickly being overrun. There was a look of desperation in the eyes of the soldiers as they prepared for the worst. "We need to get to the starport," one of the guards said. "It's the only way to escape." Zara shook her head. "We cannot leave. Not yet. We must fight back." Jack glanced at Zara, his heart heavy with fear. "Are you sure? We can't risk you, or the child." But Zara's resolve was unshaken. "If we run, we lose everything we fought for. We must stand and protect the future of the galaxy." Jack nodded reluctantly. "Then we fight." The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, and Jack instinctively grabbed his blaster. They weren't alone anymore. The enemy was closing in. The door to the room burst open, and several attackers charged in. They were dressed in dark armor, their faces hidden behind masks. They moved with precision, clearly trained for situations like this. Jack raised his weapon, but Zara placed a hand on his arm. "Let me handle this," she said quietly, her eyes narrowing in concentration. Before Jack could respond, Zara raised her hand, and the attackers froze. There was a moment of stillness, and then the Xiphrin Queen moved with grace and speed, using her advanced telekinetic abilities to knock the invaders off their feet. The soldiers fell, stunned and unable to fight back. Jack watched in awe as Zara took control of the situation. She wasn't just the queen. She was a force to be reckoned with. Her powers were beyond anything Jack had ever seen. But even with Zara's abilities, the battle was far from over. More attackers poured into the room, and Jack knew they couldn't hold off forever. He grabbed his blaster and fired, taking down several enemies. The air was thick with smoke and the sound of blaster fire. Every move felt like it could be their last. "We have to leave," Jack shouted over the noise. "Now," Zara nodded, her eyes scanning the room for any other threats. "We can't stay here. We need to find a way out." Together, they fought their way through the palace, the sound of gunfire and explosions echoing behind them. Jack's heart raced, and every step felt like it could be their last. But Zara was by his side, and somehow that gave him the strength to keep going. As they finally reached the exit, Jack turned to Zara, his breath heavy. "Are you all right?" Zara's face was pale, but her eyes were filled with a fierce determination. "We're not done yet. We have to make sure this child is born. We have to make sure the future is secured." Jack nodded. He knew what he had to do now. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The escape from the palace had been chaotic, but it had also been a wake-up call. Jack and Zara had narrowly avoided the attack, but the fight was far from over. The palace was in ruins, and the attackers, who had once been hidden in the shadows, now made their presence known. The galaxy was shifting, and Jack could feel it in the air. Peace, the kind that Zara had believed in, seemed more distant than ever. Zara had led them to a safe house deep in the palace's underground chambers, where the royal guard had set up a temporary command center. The room was small, but fortified, a hidden place for emergencies like this. As the doors closed behind them, the chaos outside seemed to fade. But the heavy tension in the air remained. Jack could see that Zara was more focused than ever. She was used to handling crises, but there was something different in her eyes now. This attack, the threat against her childhood, had pushed her into a new mindset, one of fierce determination. "We're not running anymore," Zara said, her voice steady but filled with an undeniable edge. "We're staying, and we're going to fight back." Jack nodded, though he knew the road ahead would be difficult. There was no turning back now. Whatever forces had tried to tear apart Zara's plans, they wouldn't stop until they had their way. And Jack knew that he, too, was now part of this struggle. The future of the galaxy, of peace itself, rested in the hands of the child Zara carried on. That child's future depended on them both. "We're going to need help," Jack said, his voice steady as he turned to face Zara. "We can't do this alone." Zara gave a small nod. "We won't be alone for long. There are allies out there. We just have to find them." Jack understood what she meant. Zara had always been a powerful leader, but this time, her power wasn't just about her strength. It was about uniting people, bringing them together to fight for something bigger than themselves. They couldn't win this war alone. They needed the support of the galaxy, even if they had to build it from the ground up. Over the next few days, the underground safe house became a war room. Maps were spread across tables, communication lines were set up, and representatives from various factions within the Zifron Empire arrived. The threat against the royal family was serious, and they needed to act quickly. But there was another issue on Jack's mind. Zara's pregnancy was progressing, and every day that passed brought them closer to the birth of the child who would unite the galaxy. A child who, if born into the wrong hands, could be used as a weapon rather than a symbol of peace. "We need to protect the child," Jack said one evening as they sat together in the command room. "We can't let them get to him." Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with resolve. "We won't let them. But we also can't let fear control us. The child is our hope. I believe in him more than I believe in anything else." Jack took her hand, his heart swelling with admiration for her strength. He had always respected her as a leader, but now he admired her as someone who would stop at nothing to protect their future. It wasn't just about power or control. It was about something deeper, something that was bigger than both of them. "I believe in him too," Jack said quietly. "And I'll protect you both, no matter what." The next few days were filled with long hours of strategizing, phone calls, and messages from distant corners of the galaxy. It became clear that the threat against Zara's child was not just from within the Zifron Empire, it was from the very core of the galaxy's political elite. The child was viewed as a potential symbol of change, and that frightened many. But as Jack and Zara worked together, they began to see a shift in the tide. More and more factions joined their cause, pledging support for the peace that Zara's child represented. But their enemies were just as determined. The dark forces, those who wanted to keep the galaxy divided, were gathering their own supporters. It wasn't long before Jack and Zara learned of an alliance and underground group of humans, Zifrons, and other species who were ready to stand with them. This group, though scattered across different worlds, had one thing in common. They all believed in the prophecy. They believed in the child. The alliance gave Jack and Zara new hope. With the support of their allies, they launched a counteroffensive, fighting back against the forces that sought to destroy them. It wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of the galaxy. As the battle for the future of the galaxy raged on, Jack stood by Zara's side, watching as the child within her grew. The bond between them had only deepened, and though they faced danger at every turn, they had never been more determined. The child, Zara's heir, was not just a symbol. He was their hope, their future, and the key to a better world. Jack and Zara both knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but they were ready to face them. Together, and as Zara's due date approached, Jack found himself more certain than ever that this was the beginning of a new era. The child was coming, and with him, the galaxy would be forever changed. They would fight for him, for his future, and for the peace he represented, and they would win.